This tutorial is brought to you by tipsquirrel.com, where you'll find all the best Photoshop and Lightroom tips. Follow @tipsquirrel on Twitter or go to facebook.com/tipsquirrel. Hi everybody, Mike Hoffman here, and welcome to the next installment in our exploration of the pen tool in Photoshop. And today we're going to be working with a tool called the Convert Point tool. And that tool is found here under the pen tool in the Tools panel. But remember from our earlier episodes that we can access this Convert Point tool while we're using the regular pen tool simply by pressing the Alt or Option key. Now, if you haven't watched the previous videos in this series on working with the pen tool in Photoshop, I do recommend that you go back to the first video and work your way through so that you'll have a common base of knowledge as we work through some of these more advanced topics. In today's video, we're going to be extracting this shield shape from this background image, which comes to us from graphicstock.com. As we do this, we're going to be converting anchor points using the Convert Point tool. But let's start with a quick review. I'll go to a plain white background and I'll activate this path, which has nothing but corner points. Recall that with the pen tool active, we can hold down the Control key on Windows or the Command key on Mac and switch to the white arrow tool. And when we do, we can select this path and we can select anchor points within the path. Now, if we switch to the Alt key on Windows or the Option key on Mac and we hover over a point, we get the Convert Point tool, which looks like an upside down V. When we click on a corner point using this Convert Point tool, we can drag out handles to create a smooth curve point. Notice that I dragged in this direction, and that's the direction that I drew this original path. If I hover over another anchor point and convert it and drag backwards, I get this effect. But we can remedy that by simply changing so that we're dragging in the other direction. So you'll need to be aware of which direction your path was traveling as you drew it. So as you can see, by holding the Option key down and hovering over a corner point, we can drag out handles to create a curved point. Now, using the Convert Point tool, we can also convert a smooth curve point back to a corner point. All we have to do is once again hold down the Alt or Option key to get the Convert Point tool and click directly on the center of the point. When we do, it reverts to a corner point. So we can go back around to these curved points that we created and click on the points to return them to corner points. And again, we can drag out to create a smooth curve. Now, one other thing you can do with the Convert Point tool is to change from a smooth curve to a cusp point, as we saw in last week's video. To do that, we simply again hold the Alt or Option key down to get our Convert Point tool, and now we can drag the handle independently of the other handle, and this allows us to create a cusp point. As you can see, we can go either way with this, and we have full control over these handles independently. Once again, we can click right here on the point to convert it back to a square corner. I'm going to deselect this work path now, and I'll add my shield image back in, and we'll start working with this. Now, in order to begin, I've created a starter path, and if I hide this layer temporarily, we can see that this path is made up of 4 corner points. So in order to define the shape of this shield, we're going to want to convert these corner points to curve points, and more specifically, we're going to make them cusps. Now, if we look a little bit closer, you'll see that I've placed these corner points just inside the perimeter of the shield. Remember, we don't need to have a pixel for pixel match here, but we want to follow this curve. So in order to do that, I've placed these points about 1 or 2 pixels inside the edge of the shield shape so that we can make sure that we're not picking up any of the background. Now, in order to create the curved edges of this shield, we're going to convert these corner points to curves. And so I'll once again choose my pen tool, which is my tool of choice, and use the Option or Alt key, and I'm going to drag out some handles here. Now when I do, we get a smooth curve, but remember that we can position this convert point tool out here over the handles and drag them independently. Now I've got the ability to adjust the length of this handle, but I'm going to make it be about 1/3 of the length of this entire segment. And I'll do the same thing on this side. And by dragging these handles down like this, we've now created a cusp point here at the top of the shield. Now again, I'm holding down the Alt or Option key, and I'm going to go to the next point. And once again, I'm going to drag. And notice I dragged in the wrong direction. Not to worry, I'll simply revert the direction and drag this way. Now I've created a strange path here, but once again, using the Convert Point tool on this endpoint, I can drag it down and align it with the direction here of this line segment that we need. And now we've got a nice curve here. We'll do the same for this one going down and start a curve here. But now we'll have to convert this bottom point to a curve as well. So I'll drag this out, and then I'll hold my cursor over the end point of the handle and drag it upwards. Now you can see here that we've got a difficult time to match the exact contour of this shield. So in this case, what I want to do is actually create an extra anchor point here in the middle. If I hover my pen tool over the center of this segment, I get the plus sign next to the cursor, and I can click and create an anchor point. I'll hold my Control key down, or Command key on a Mac, and drag this anchor point over and position it along the perimeter here. Now once again, using my Control key with the white arrow tool, I can adjust these handles and get them to line up so that I've traced the edge of this shield the way that I want it to be. Now if we're not sure whether we're getting the exact contour, we can simply zoom in and make sure that we're not getting any of the background. We want to stay inside of the edge of the shield here. In fact, this point could stand to come out a little bit further, and then we see that we're picking up a little of the background here. So we can just adjust these handles slightly to bring that path inside the edge of the border of the shield. Again, this is a back and forth affair, and you may have to make these adjustments a few times to get them exactly right. And that looks like it's got it. Maybe just a little bit more right here. Now we'll want to do the same thing on this side. And recall that we've already got our handle created here, so we'll just hold the Control or Command key down and more or less match this one with symmetry since we've already done the adjustments. We'll create our new anchor point here in the middle, switch to the Control key or the Command key and drag this out, and then make our final last adjustments just to get the contour correct. We'll convert this last corner point to a cusp point using the Convert Point tool, and now we've got our path created. We can zoom to full view, and with this path created, recall that we can Control-click here on this thumbnail to create a selection. Now it looks like I've got a little bit of an anomaly here on this section, so I can go back to my path. I'll deselect that, enable this path, and once again with the pen tool, I'll Control-click to select these points and make some additional adjustments to this part of the path. That looks better. I Control-click on the path. There's the selection. I can make sure that my layer is selected and press Control or Command J to duplicate that selection to a new layer, turn off the background, and here's our shield selected and isolated from the rest of the image. The Convert Point tool is what allowed us to change our corner points to curves and vice versa, as well as to change our smooth curves to cusp points. Making use of the Convert Point tool gives you one more item in your pen toolbox. And now we're ready to move on to any complex path selection within Photoshop. Stay tuned for the next video where we'll work through a complete path creation from start to finish on a more complex subject. I hope you'll join me for that. My name is Mike Hoffman. My website is hoffmanartdesign.com. You'll find a variety of Photoshop, Lightroom, and photography tips, tricks, and related information there. You can follow me on Twitter at mhoffman2001, and you can find me on Google Plus by simply going to g+mikehoffman.com. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed today's video.